All right, good evening. And guess where we are again? Thank you for
Yes,
being here
yeah.
to join me for ACIM Talks with Reverend Jim. It is Monday, November 11th. And as usual, it doesn't, man, it's not hard for us to break the ice and to just get to talking about stuff. Um, Never a pause. I guess you could say we're friends, couldn't you?
I
Yeah.
hope so. It just depends. Are we holy friends or special friends?
I think we're holy friends.
I hope so
And,
too. Yeah.
I think we may have differing views on different things, but there's an overarching principle that keeps us together. And I like that kind of glue.
Mhm.
So I'm glad we're together. Debbie, it's good to see you back with the group here, at least for a while. We all
Thank you.
know you're a busy woman with all your talents and singing and all the things you do. So we appreciate your time to be with us here tonight. Um, why don't we get into it? I'm excited to be back tonight with the Unity and the Course in Miracles book. Uh, but as usual, I just brought something in. Hopefully, I try and bring in some what I call mood bringers to get us ready for our study. So I hope you'll find some peace and encouragement. I just brought some music in that I thought might be appropriate. Let me share that with you. I think it only runs maybe 4 minutes or something. And then we'll get into our study tonight. So here we go.
Everything is gonna be alright. Yeah. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding, but in all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy path. Everything is gonna be alright. Every little thing is gonna be alright. If you trust God, Lord, I knew thing is gonna be alright. Every little thing is gonna be alright. Keep on praying, Lord, I knew thing is gonna be alright. Every little thing is gonna be alright. Keep on believing, Lord, I knew that thing is gonna be alright. Every little thing is gonna be alright. Because the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leadeth me in the path of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadows of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, thy comfort me. Thou prepare the table before me in the presence of my enemy. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Everything is gonna be alright. Every little thing is gonna be alright if you trust God. Lord, I know things is gonna be alright. Every little thing is gonna be alright. Keep on praying, Lord, I know things is gonna be alright. Every little thing is gonna be alright, Lord. Every little thing is gonna be alright. Be alright. Every little thing is gonna be alright.
That's a oldie as a goodie for me. You know, I grew up in the in the black church, and that music is from a genre we would call praise and worship. So Stanley Johnson, the performer, is a one-man band. Okay. He coincidentally, I'd never heard of the guy. He was performing at the community center adjacent to my apartment complex many years ago. Okay. And so I went over there. I don't know, it may have been a free concert. He was doing secular music, but he was also selling CDs. And I saw this one called Revelations from God. And of course, it attracted my attention, and the rest is history. But you know, the production of the CD with him doing all the different voices and harmonies, and it just still makes my heart full. So hopefully it was a fitting introduction for our discussion tonight. Everything's gonna be all right. For we know that all things work together for good. Or there's a Course in Miracles version where Jesus says, for we know that a happy outcome to all things is sure. So for those of us that need to be reminded to keep the faith, that helps me out tonight too. You all good with that?
Yeah, I would just tweak it to everything is all right.
Everything is all right. What did I say?
Well, the song said everything's gonna be all right.
Ah, that's true, Dee.
Yeah.
So yeah, he probably wouldn't mind that either. So thank you.
Sure.
We are starting tonight in Unity and A Course in Miracles. We're on page 47. And we're still in chapter 4. Believe it or not, we've done the introduction and all of that, and we're 47 pages in. But just to do a little refresher, this one's a pretty small chapter, relatively speaking, to some of the others. Who is Jesus? Who am I? That's the title of chapter 4. And we've done the brief introduction, which they always do. And we talked about the first part of that, who is Jesus? But how come the title is Who is Jesus? But when it first starts talking about Jesus, it adds the man. Do you see it on page 45?
Mhm.
Did you
Yes.
find anything interesting that they didn't just say Jesus? You're going to say what A Course in Miracles and Unity has to say on this subject, like they always do, right? But I just found it interesting that both the Course and Unity discussions wasn't about Jesus, it was about Jesus the man. So if you don't find anything interesting, insightful to say about that, that's okay with me. But I found that intriguing. Any comments? If not, we'll pick up where we left off.
I don't remember what it said. I'm sorry.
Well,
So I can't.
I would say just from a I don't really want to say comprehensive, but just I think Jesus the man makes it more relatable. Makes it when people are reading and going through this, Jesus the man makes it personable, like relatable. Instead of Jesus the mystic or Jesus the whatever, Jesus the man. Just that title itself means that it's exploring that the exploration is that he's just like you and me, or we're just like he is.
As opposed to what other explanation?
As opposed to putting him on a pedestal.
Right.
Something that's not reachable.
Okay. So I think that's the insight that that kind of hit me too, because it fits into this statement that Jesus is like all of us. So here we go. Is Joan Jesus?
Yes. Yes.
All right. How about Miss Newman?
I don't know if it's as the man. No, I'd
Absolutely.
say no. I think we're each Christ, but not Jesus.
Okay. So do you see how putting a label on it is an accommodation to people who believe in separation? So what you're saying, Dee, is there is no Jesus, only the Christ.
Yes.
And yet this book says, okay, I'll make you separate and I'll call one of you Dee and I'll call one of you Kathleen and I'll call one of you Sherilyn as an accommodation so I can start conversations with you folks. Because if I didn't do it that way, you'd be so fearful. Okay. But
Mhm.
we're all about differences. So it's very easy to find certain ones to put on a pedestal. We love that stuff because then we don't have to take responsibility. All right. I don't want to run that in the ground, but yeah, Kathleen, that's it made it relatable. And Dee said, but we're really, our identity is the Christ. We are we talked about Jesus, the man, and read what Unity had to say about it, right? And tonight we want to see, yes, what a wait a minute, I'm getting it mixed up. We started Jesus the Man on page 45. We read what A Course in Miracles and Unity said about it. And so tonight we're on the subject of who am I? Is that making sense now?
Yes.
We're on the right track. So we're ready for readers here. Cheryl, would you be one? Debbie is reading, right, Deb?
Yes.
Okay. So reader 2 is Debbie, and then 3 is Dee, and 4 is Joan, and 5 is Kathleen. Sound good?
Sure.
Yes.
All right, let's get to it, Sherilyn.
Okay, I'm not sure where you intend for us to meet to start.
Page
Is it who
47. My apologies.
Okay.
Page 47.
Yes,
Who
I have it.
am
I have it. This is a question both teachings address. Our focus has been on our reality as God's creation. Here, we focus on the individuals we think we are, who we define ourselves to be when we think of ourselves as as bodies, individual minds, or personalities. As seemingly separated individuals, we believe life is limited to our physical existence. Although we believe we are separated individuals, this is not our reality. Both teachings refer to the same scripture, Genesis 2:21, to address what seemed to occur.
Please continue with A Course in Miracles.
A Course in Miracles. Yet the Bible says a deep sleep fell upon Adam, and nowhere is there reference to his waking up. The world has not yet experienced a comprehensive reawakening or rebirth. Such a rebirth is impossible as long as you continue to project or miscreate.
And Sherilyn, why don't you finish what Unity has to say in the same way?
Okay. A limited concept of Jehovah God caused a deep, deep mesmeric state to fall on the man Adam. Nowhere in scripture is there any record to show that Adam was ever fully awakened, and he, man, is still partly in this dreamlike state of consciousness. In this state, he creates a world of his own and peoples it with ideas corresponding to his own sleep, benumbed consciousness, benumbs his own sleep, benumbed consciousness.
The consciousness. By the way, just a reminder, do you see the superscript? I think it would be 192 at the end of that paragraph. Just a reminder, and let's just do it. That's the quote from the Unity writings, okay? So if you go way to the back of the book, starting on page 185, there is a sequential list of all of the Unity quotes. So if you go to that number 192, you got to turn a few pages. You'll see that's from a Charles Fillmore writing called The Mysteries of Genesis. Okay. Is it not interesting that Fillmore scribed or scripted the same thoughts as Helen Schuckman, and yet I don't know what year it was, but Fillmore was way ahead of Helen Schuckman. Unity started around 1870 or so.
Yeah.
Schuckman 1965 when she first started hearing the voice. And yet, do you see any contradiction even though they were 100 years apart?
There's no contradicting in any of the spiritual paths.
Mm,
Because we're all listening to the same voice. That's why we say the same things, but tailored to the audience that we're responsible to. Okay.
mhm.
I just find it very real. All right.
It's what convinced, it is what convinced me that the Course of Miracles was speaking truth, because it's the same as it's saying the same thing as all spiritual studies, all spiritual paths do, the same teachings.
Yes.
It is what convinced me.
One of my favorite spiritual teachers as a young man was Paramahansa Yogananda.
Oh yeah.
And he said the same things, maybe in different words, but they're conveying the same ideas. And to me, when you hear the same thing being spoken, it just adds validity to what's being said. Any comments from you about this deep sleep?
Well, I guess we still are in it, on our way to awakening. But it's the human condition,
Mhm.
Well,
even today.
well, let me pick with it a little bit more, since you know we like this sort of thing. To me, there's the language is just a little different between A Course in Miracles and Unity. In A Course in Miracles, it says, the Bible says a deep sleep fell upon Adam, right?
Uh-huh.
Unity says, who caused the deep sleep? The Course didn't say that, but Unity says it. It says Jehovah God caused a deep sleep to fall upon them.
Huh?
No, it doesn't say that. It says a limited concept of Jehovah God. Right?
Yes.
Let's talk. So I appreciate you giving me more insight to that. My question, okay, is a limited concept of Jehovah God caused it, right, Dee?
Yeah.
What brought about the limited concept? You know me, I'm like a little kid. I'll go, but why? And then you tell me, and I'll say, but why? Anybody want to tackle what caused the limited concept of Jehovah God that led to the deep sleep?
The same thing that's causing it now, ignorance,
Right.
lack of knowing the truth.
Is it a lack or a decision?
A decision.
Ah, tell me about the course's view of the Big Bang versus science's view. Anybody ever heard that discussion? You're getting ready to do the disappearance of the universe, D, with your
Yep.
study group.
Yep.
Do you remember Artin and Persa having anything to say about the Big Bang?
I don't remember.
Okay, you may not if you haven't read it already. You're getting ready to.
Oh,
Oh.
no, I've read it. I've read it a few times, but it's been a long time ago.
Okay, maybe you missed that part. Anybody else? What did Artin and Persa say about this Big Bang in the disappearance of the universe? I got them stumped. You
Refresh.
read it, right?
I've read it too. I don't remember.
Okay. Essentially, they say the Big Bang wasn't the creation of the universe. The Big Bang was separation.
Yeah.
It
Yeah, and
wasn't- Go ahead,
yeah.
Dean.
that's what it's saying here. The mesmeric state.
What's a
The-
mesmeric
to
state?
me, that's the human condition. We've been hypnotized into a false belief system.
And in the course, remember in the early chapters, it says something like consciousness was the first step in the separation.
Mm-hmm.
It was a splitting of consciousness that was the tiny mad idea.
Okay.
That you could be aware of your own consciousness separate and private and have your own little separate heaven. Now, let me ask it this way. Does peace and love and bangs go together?
Nope.
Do they result in explosions?
No.
Peace and love? No.
They go kaboom. So you see, Artin and Persa says that wasn't the creation of the universe. It didn't start with a bang.
Bang.
How can love start with a bang? So just some things to think about, since I so appreciate you and my nitpicking here, but
I love it. Thank you.
good deal.
Although, I don't know, maybe this is way off but with the Big Bang, aren't they sometimes, no, maybe not in that book, but referring to energies, and energies can collide. Energies don't always work together.
Not in our world.
Right, so,
Are
but
we comparing apples and oranges then?
maybe, I don't know. Because I know sometimes, they look at it like,
Yeah.
there's a positive and a negative energy, and we need both.
Okay. So is that a separation? Positive and negative?
It's duality.
It's duality, yeah.
And do we need both?
It's different. It's different sides of the same.
And do heads and tails fight? Or do they coexist without explosions?
I would think mostly they coexist, but I'm not going to say they couldn't fight.
Okay. I appreciate all your comments. Any
I
other?
mean, I don't know, that's just,
Well, hey, please don't think I know. I'm not saying I know. Far
Mhm.
be it for me. Hey, I don't know anything.
Well, in duality, they do fight. In
Yeah.
unity, there is not two sides of the same coin. There's not sides.
There are no sides
Right.
because
Right.
sides are separation.
Right.
You
But
see
it's the
how
ego, yeah.
extensive this whole separation thing has permeated
Yeah.
everything we see and do.
Mhm.
And
But
it
that's
all,
the course never says has not said it's the Big Bang theory or the unity hasn't. They're not saying that here, right?
No, no,
I
Yeah.
think
no.
I'm
I think
referring
it's more
to
the ego that would
disappearance.
say there's I would think it would be more the ego. The ego has to separate these two things out
Yep.
to keep the duality going.
Okay. And again, my reference is from the disappearance of the universe here.
Right.
Which I don't know anyway. I'm not gonna. I
Okay.
don't know that much about.
All
It's
right.
been too long since I read that book to say.
It's all about the Course in Miracles, the disappearance of the universe.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm.
Sherilyn and Joan and Kathleen, before we move on, speechless. You good?
Yep.
Something to consider, right?
Mhm.
Had
Yes.
you ever thought about it that way? The Big Bang, like that was created? All right,
No.
let's move on. We're up to Debbie Miller.
There's lots of theories when it's not true.
Mhm.
There's multiplicity when things aren't true.
Right. Okay.
And certainly when nobody knows for sure.
Right.
It's very humbling, isn't it, not to know
Mhm.
anything. All right, we're up to Miss Miller. Please, you know where we are?
Our current perceived state.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. The ideas and beliefs we develop and use to live our life are not always based on the knowledge of God. Both teachings maintain that our conscious state is a derivation of our separated state of mind. It is a state of perception. Ideas and beliefs we develop in our separated mind are subsequently accepted as real and are projected outwards, making the world we see.
What does that word derivation mean? You see it.
It means deriving from
And so
something.
what is it saying our consciousness is coming from? Do
A
I have
separated
that right,
state.
Shirley?
From
Okay.
separate.
A separated state of consciousness.
So do you see why the Course says that consciousness was the first consequence of separation?
Mhm.
Consciousness, individual consciousness, was derived from the tiny mad idea that you had a consciousness that you were aware of separate from what your brother is aware of.
So I've been confused about that for years. So I thought that's the part of I understand what the Course is saying in it, saying what you're explaining. But I thought consciousness is what lives on in us when the bodies, that the bodies die, but our consciousness lives on.
Mm.
The consciousness never lived or died.
So is consciousness what we are or not?
Say that again, dear.
Is consciousness what we are or not?
There's only one consciousness.
Okay,
It's indivisible. It's eternal. You thought you could have your own.
okay,
That was derived from the tiny mad idea that you could be separate from and have autonomy from the whole.
so there are no individualized consciousness.
Here, this always helps me now. Let me ask it again. Is your higher self an individual?
No,
Mm.
no.
I don't know if it's an individuated consciousness. I don't, that's what I'm questioning. I don't know.
So if the higher self, is the higher self compatible with omnipotence, omniscience, and omnipresence?
Yes.
I think we talked about that last week or the week before about what the higher self is. Yes.
Right. And that's why I bring it up again, because it kind of helps to clarify when you're asking for guidance from your higher self is not going to give you guidance that is good for you alone.
Mm.
Correct. Correct.
It does not act on behalf of what's good for your little old tiny self. So if you're going to go to your higher self, it's going to do things in a way that is good for the whole
Mhm.
and not for you alone. And
Okay.
it's hard for us to deal with because we say, oh, my prayers don't get answered. Lesson 358. No call to God can be unheard nor left unanswered. Really? None? None of them? You mean every prayer has answered? But then there's a remember at the end of the workbook where the lessons get longer, the lesson titles get longer. No call to God can be unheard nor left unanswered. And of this I can be sure, his answer
Just the one.
is the one I really want. So sometimes you don't think your prayer was answered because it didn't show up the way you thought it should. But my higher self does not offer guidance that is selfish. Something to think about.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. So we talked about the meaning of the word derivation, and that was the introduction to our current perceived state. Is there anything else about you want to say about talk about there before we go to D? What A Course in Miracles said. All right, D, would you please? You know where we are, dear?
Yes.
All right.
In A Course in Miracles, the definition of the ego is what we think of as our true self, small letters, true self, in a separated state of consciousness. From the glossary index for A Course in Miracles, we find a definition of the ego, which could be said to describe what we think is our true self when in a separated state of consciousness. Ego, the belief in the reality of the separated or false self, made as substitute for the capital S self which God created. The thought of separation that gives rise to sin, guilt, fear, and a thought system based on specialness to protect itself. That part of the mind that believes it is separate from the mind of Christ. Note, not to be equated with the ego or psychoanalysis, but can be equated with the entire psyche of which the psychoanalytic ego is a part.
It's familiar with psychoanalysis, hopefully better than me. All right. Is that a key comment? Sorry.
What is your, no, what is your question?
Well, my question is going to be, do you find the parenthetical note confusing? To me, it just says in psychoanalysis, there's like the id and the ego and super ego.
Yeah.
And they just want to caution, we're not talking about one of the three. This definition of ego encompasses all three.
All three, yeah.
All right. That's just my take on it. I don't know. Okay. Well, that goes without saying that I don't know. All right. Would you please continue, whoever's reading? Or is that good, or should we move on? Dee, you want to read some more or no?
Sure.
All right.
Everyone makes an ego or a self for himself, which is subject to enormous variation because of its instability. Your own state of mind is a good example of how the ego was made. When you threw knowledge, the knowledge of God, away, it is as if you never had it. No one dismisses something he considers part of himself. You react to your ego much as God does to his creations, with love, protection, and charity.
Okay. So love is still at work here. It is the giver of all things. All things. You made it because you thought it was an idea you loved. I mean, who wouldn't want to have their own separate heaven? Doesn't that sound like a fabulous idea?
No.
No? Where you could do whatever you wanted to do? Sounds like something you could really get into until you start finding out that it had unintended consequences. And then you start perceiving, oh shit, what have I done? Sorry.
It's not quite working.
Apologize for the
That's
words.
fine.
We okay so far?
Yeah.
Then we're up to our next reader, right? Joan, you want to pick up with if you cannot hear, right?
If you cannot hear the voice for God, it is because you do not choose to listen. That you do listen to the voice of your ego is demonstrated by your attitudes, your feelings, and your behavior. Yet, this is what you want. This is what you are fighting to keep and what you are vigilant to save. Your mind is filled with schemes to save the face of your ego, and you do not seek the face of Christ. The glass in which the ego seeks to see its face is dark indeed. How can it maintain the trick of its existence except with mirrors? But where you look to find yourself is up to you.
And there's one more little statement after that, Joni.
The ego is not you. We
Okay.
also identify ourselves as our body, which is an extension of the thought system of the ego. The body is the ego's home by its own election. It is the only identification with which the ego feels safe, since the body's vulnerability is its own best argument that you cannot be of God. This is a belief the ego sponsors eagerly.
Listen, let's stop just a minute, see if you have any questions or comments. Also, I saw a note in the chat that Kathleen had to leave.
Yeah, she said she had a headache.
Oh, gee. Okay. All right. So I'm going to close that and hopefully she's feeling better soon. All right. Comments about anything you've read from if you cannot hear the ego's voice, it is because you do not choose to listen. What do you think?
I'm sure it's true. We often don't want to listen to it.
Why?
Well, there could be many reasons for it.
Name one.
We want to be right.
Okay. You want your own separate heaven. Yes? No?
Yes.
Okay. Like we may say a lot of things that we don't really mean.
Mhm.
Talk is cheap. Talk can camouflage you to others and even to yourself.
Mhm.
So it is a dishonesty.
Mhm.
Okay, just let's start here. Let's start with the real reason instead of stuff you make up.
Mhm.
All right, we can work more with honesty than with your self-deception.
Right.
Does that make
Mhm.
sense?
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right.
That's right. Well, I guess I don't know. I'll throw this out there. This may be. I'm thinking we like to try. All right. I maybe like to try to make my concept of spirit's voice fall in line with my ego, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Subject to the same judgment, the same whatever. I have to wrap it in that package to make it more
Which,
palatable,
right,
which
you
really
don't have
goes
to-
against it, which is absolutely dishonest.
Yes, and then it won't work,
Right,
and you say there is no voice.
right,
All works out nicely, except you don't get anywhere.
right. I'm still on that treadmill. I'm still in that little hamster cage and I'm moving, but I'm not going anywhere.
But the reason why becomes more apparent. It's because we're being dishonest.
Yeah.
And they say the truth hurts, but
Yeah.
maybe it's a better starting point than fooling yourself. Let's read a little more. We're getting to close. Is this
What? The
satisfying?
truth only hurts to the ego.
Yeah, that's
So
what I
if
was
it-
thinking.
So if it
Yeah.
hurts,
The
it's a
truth-
sure sign I'm with the ego.
What hurts spirit, right?
This stuff is getting deep, right? Thank you, Dee.
Yes.
Yeah.
Continuing on, right? Let's see. We're down at the bottom of 49. Kathleen
Yes.
left. Let me read this. I think we pick up with everything you recognize, you identify with, right?
Mhm.
Yes.
Everything you recognize, you identify with externals, something outside yourself. You cannot even think of God without a body, or in some form you think you recognize. The body is a tiny fence around a little part of a glorious and complete idea. It draws a circle, infinitely small, around a very little segment of heaven, splintered from the whole, proclaiming that within it is your kingdom where God cannot enter. What do you think? True, false?
True.
Freedom must be impossible as long as you perceive a body as yourself. The body is a limit. Who would seek for freedom in a body looks for it where it cannot be found? The mind can be made free when it no longer sees itself as in a body, firmly tied to it and sheltered by its presence. Comments before we close tonight? And by the way, all the Course in Miracles references are also in that numbered sequence at the back of the book if you want to check them out.
Sure.
Our current perceived state is what we read, and we got to read what A Course in Miracles said. Your comments, do you agree? Is it insightful? You already knew that. Time to just say good night. Some closing comments.
It is insightful. You
Yes.
know, it's at least for me to, to look at it again, getting away from this book. It's good to look at. It's back to basics.
Yeah. Does that differ with your way of mastery study or the teachings of A Course in Love? We were discussing those before we started the recording. Or maybe it drives it home. I found the other writings beautiful, but somehow it was all blended together with not quite enough actionable, practical components to kind of start giving me a roadmap other than to just sit quietly with these beautiful thoughts. I like how it says, remember that lesson? I forget the number. Heaven is the decision I must make.
Mhm.
It is a choice. And so, however much I think I'm choosing it, I don't want to let the ego into my choosing, because it will do choices based on the same thing it does to everything.
Mhm. Mhm.
It will be a deception of a choice. Lesson 20, I am determined to see. 21, I am determined to see things differently. 27, above all else, like my life depended on it, right? And 28, above all else, I am determined to see things differently. I mean, this is a kind of new motivation, and the ego thinks that it can circumvent in there 100% decision. Do you see how we're moving already? And everything said, from duality to a non-dual choice. And some of us have a hard time getting into that mode. Please, I'm not excluded, but I'm really trying to give it a sincere choice.
Mhm.
And I'm seeing it pay off. It's not like just the glimpses of it, little sparks, but I'm starting to see this constant stream of light every day of my life. Small though the stream may be, it really is getting more constant. And that is the compelling thing that keeps me in this mode or this zone. Right, D. Newman?
Absolutely.
All right. And I say that because my friend, I never ask her how she's doing,
Why not?
because it's always the same.
Make this year different by making it all the same.
I'm so glad to get to talk to you, experienced the Course in Miracle students. So, Deb, do you have a
Well,
comment?
I was just gonna throw out that out. I mean, you're talking about, making these choices, and I'm thinking one good thing that I know is if I realize that spirit didn't make that decision, I can choose again. And to me, that's the real beauty of this. If I realize I am on the right way, that looked good an hour ago, but now it's not so great. And that was a side trip I didn't want to take.
Yes.
Anyway, I just have to throw that out there. It's
Listen,
because but that's how I learn. I guess I'm the hard-headed one. Those walls are
yeah,
still there for me to bang my head on. I don't know.
you have to learn is ultimately what you already knew.
Yeah.
We just had to remove the blocks that were put in place against it.
Mhm.
It's remember the book A Journey Without Distance? Is that Robert Scutch again?
Yes.
Anyhow,
I don't
hey,
remember.
Thank you guys for coming.
Thank
and
you.
for
Thank
staying.
you. Thank
Thank
everyone.
Oh,
See you
If
again.
there's
I'll be
nothing
listening.
else, I'll let you go, okay? Don't
Bye.
take it
okay.
with
Night,
nickels,
everyone.
and
Bye.
I'll see
Good
you
to see you,
guys soon.
Debbie.
Boy, I'm old.
Bye.
Good nickels. Good night.
Namaste.
Namaste.